Jonah and I sort of looked at each other after that whole experience and we thought, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way, a faster way to execute transactions on chain as a team that doesn't involve as much nail biting, making sure that you're sending it to the right address, you're not accidentally losing funds, and that everything goes smoothly.
None of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by WAGMI Ventures or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Hey everybody, Benga here with WAGMI Ventures podcast. On today's episode, we have Jonah Erlich and Ittai Svidler, co-founders of Den. Den is the fastest multi-signature wallet for on-chain teams that helps them create and execute on-chain transactions 10 times faster. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast. We do snapshots with interesting builders and founders across crypto and AI. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. For now, let's get into it. Jonah, Ittai, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Benga. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you guys on. It's been really amazing to think about who the folks that we have coming through. And one of the areas that, of course, continues to resonate in crypto is security, it's custody, and just excited to have you on, get your thoughts, your insights. But before we dive in, can you talk to us about your journeys in crypto?
Yeah, I guess for me, it started back in 2016. I was still a student at University of Michigan, and I was working at a local VC shop. Back then, it was still really early days. We didn't know anything about crypto or the on-chain world, and Ethereum slid across our desk. We knew so little, we thought maybe it was a possible venture deal. It took no time at all reading the white paper and the yellow paper to quickly realize that this was something different altogether. And for me, it wasn't really about finance or tokens. It was about the world computer. A decentralized cloud computer was the way I saw it. It blew my mind, and that's what really started it all for me. I went back to school. I started doing smart contract development for hire. At the time, we didn't know about node providers like Infura or Alchemy, so we ran our own nodes to deploy these smart contracts. One thing led to another. We started mining Ether, dual mining it with some other tokens, which is really how it all started. Michigan is also where I met Jonah, so I'll let him tell his story.
Thanks, Ittai. I got started in crypto back for the first time in 2000. Scrolling through Reddit, I ran into this little document called the Bitcoin White Paper and thought, oh my God, this is the coolest thing that I've ever seen. And then I promptly forgot about it for 5 years. Fast forward to 2017, around the time Ittai and I met, where I was very involved with the Sia network and Blockstack, while Ittai was doing his thing as well. We started learning together. Fast forward a few years, we get into the story of how Den was created, and happy to get into that after our personal introductions.
Awesome. Thank you for that background. And so Den, my understanding, was essentially born from your disappointment of not being able to complete what you viewed as relatively simple tasks on chain during the impressive 5-day sprint that raised over $40 million from 17,000 people to bid on the copy of the U.S. Constitution at auction. Talk to us about the issues you faced and how all that sort of was the inspiration for building Den and addressing those problems.
Yeah, Jonah and I were on the core team for Constitution DAO. And a lot of people are familiar with that story from the outside, but there's a little bit of a different story from the inside. On the outside, we raised over $40 million to bid on the U.S. Constitution at auction at Sotheby's. And on the inside, what happened was because we raised that money on chain, we ran into some interesting problems. And that's all what leads to Den. But on the inside, what had happened was we had over $40 million on chain. And like any responsible organization, we were custodying all those funds in a safe multi-sig. Multi-signature wallet requires several different people to sign off on it before funds go through to make sure that nothing bad happens. In that case, we had a 9 out of 13 multi-sig, meaning we had 13 possible people that could approve a transaction and 9 of them had to actually approve it in order for it to go through. Seems simple, but if you've ever tried to get 9 people to take an action quickly, it wasn't that simple. It was hard. We had to send a single on-chain transaction, and it took us running around Manhattan, going to coffee shops, people's offices, begging them to sign the transaction. I personally Instagram DM'd a few people's siblings to try to get a hold of them to get it to sign off, and we almost missed the deadline. Thankfully, we didn't, but it took quite some time for our cortisol levels to come down. And that's really what got us into Den. Jonah and I sort of looked at each other after that whole experience, and we thought, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way, a faster way to execute transactions on chain as a team that doesn't involve as much nail biting, making sure that you're sending it to the right address, you're not accidentally losing funds, and that everything goes smoothly.
It would be interesting to hear your take on those early days as well, Jonah.
Yeah, I think Ittai did a great job of covering the high level story, what happened. And after Constitution DAO, we kind of took a breath and we took a look back at our experience with Constitution DAO. And we took a look back at our other experiences managing funds on chain as a team, operating on chain as a team. And what we realized is that a lot of these experiences were very stressful. They were very confusing. They were very slow. And so looking at the experience using our multi-sig as part of Constitution DAO, as well as those past experiences, what we identified is that the most important thing is for us to build the fastest multi-sig for on-chain teams. And the reason that fast matters isn't just because of, hey, we want to get things done as quickly as possible, although that's important, but a multi-sig that feels fast also means that it feels secure and you feel confident that you're doing the right thing when you're operating on chain, that you're not interacting with anything malicious or anything that may cause harm to your organization or your assets. And so there is a long laundry list of problems that we found from our own experiences, but then also doing user research with dozens to now hundreds of multi-sig signers to understand their experiences. And that's how we have built Den, actually to this day, of that baseline question of what is the hardest part that makes things feel slow, makes things feel scary, makes things feel risky.
Can you speak a little bit about your approach that is obviously driven by your personal experiences, but there's particularly features that your platform has, whether it's the human readable transactions or the non-technical transaction builder. These are very intentional features. Can you share more about how you got there, what you're doing with it today, and what the future for it looks like?
Totally. So there's two aspects of how we got to where we are today and how we're moving towards the future. And I think this is both around choosing who we choose to build for and what we choose to build. And starting with that who, one thing we made a really explicit decision to do early on was to focus on crypto native organizations. You can think of a crypto native organization as an organization that natively generates their revenue on chain, that has their primary operations on chain, that has their primary asset store on chain. And this was a really explicit decision, but because we realized very early on that the only way to build a product that is so easy to use that anyone can use it is you need to work with the people that are operating on chain now and slowly solve their problems over time. And by doing that, you'll iterate to a solution that is easy for anyone to use. So I think that who is the first part. The how and the what is the second part, where we are big adherents to a process called the mom test. Highly recommend for folks that are unfamiliar looking up what the mom test does, where basically what you do is you ask these open-ended questions, not to ask people for feedback or ask if they want your product, but just to understand their problems. Totally agnostic to what the product is. In the early days, before we even had a product, we wouldn't even tell people what we were thinking until after we had completed asking them the questions from the mom test. And from that, we've been able to uncover what are the hardest problems of operating on chain. One example is coordinating all your signers to get them to sign a transaction in a timely fashion, where we solve that with automated recurring notifications where you already work: Telegram, Discord, Slack. An additional problem we heard is it's really annoying to reimburse gas. Everyone was reimbursing gas for the person that executed the transaction, since the last signer has to execute the transaction. And we even heard people offering us 5% of automatic reimbursement if we could automate the reimbursement process. And we looked at that problem and said, no, the actual solution is not reimbursement, it's account abstraction. And so Den, by default, lets you pay gas directly from your multisig, as opposed to the last signer paying gas for that transaction. Now, this process that I've outlined of the mom test and working very closely with these crypto native customers is the exact process we're still following now. And we've got a lot of really exciting things on the roadmap that's getting us towards.
Again, very intentional about how you want to focus on the user experience. Gas reimbursement is certainly one of the pain points in the on-chain experience. Hey everybody, quick thing here. We're excited to announce WAGMI Advisory, your home for all things fundraising, hiring, and partnerships. This is all about supercharging your project with the WAGMI network, consisting of over 20,000 executives, investors, and builders in crypto, all ready to come alongside your project to help it succeed. Get in touch at team@wagmiventures.io to learn more and figure out if WAGMI Advisory is the right fit for your project. Let's get back to the show. If you can, just unpack a little bit more, because it is an area where on-chain teams tend to spend a lot of resources just managing the blockchain transaction fees, gas reimbursement. And you mentioned that the way you guys solve it is really through account abstraction. What does that look like today, and how impactful has it been to your clients who are using it today?
Yeah, I mean, just to make it even more concrete for people who aren't familiar with multi-sigs or haven't managed assets on chain as a team, but essentially, right, you usually have the organization's assets in this account, the multi-sig. But the person who pays the transaction fee isn't the organization from the organization's account. It's an individual within the organization. Imagine you're working at some company off-chain and you're trying to pay a vendor as the company, but you yourself as an employee have to pay the wire transfer fee. That just doesn't make sense at all. The fee should come from the company's account. And so when we say account abstraction or letting the user pay gas from their safe multisig, that's exactly what we mean. It's just paying the transaction fee from the organization's account where they already have their funds, instead of having an individual that's a member of the organization paying it, then needing to go through this lengthy reimbursement process. And the thing with the reimbursement process before too was, once you get reimbursed, that's also a transaction from the organization's account that also had transaction fees that then need to be reimbursed. And so really with the mom test, the process that Jonah outlined, what we do is we try to understand what the problem is without trying to take at face value what a possible solution is until we really understand the problem. Oftentimes, when it comes to building a great product or user experience, customers have suggestions for a solution, and oftentimes they're right, and that solution is great. Usually, you have to take a step back and really understand the problem and see if there's an even better solution that you can dream up of.
Any more details you can share on the human readable transaction piece as well?
Yeah, with the human readable transactions, there's a really big problem being solved, which is simply, I guess, as it implies, understanding the transaction. A lot of people that are coming from Web 2 or traditional finance might not understand why that's so important. But transaction's simple. You're sending US dollars from one account of this amount to another. But on-chain transactions are a lot more complex. They're not what we think of in traditional finance. One transaction could actually contain 10 different transfers of 10 different tokens of different amounts to different individuals, or they could be even more complex. Remember, I mentioned that I first fell in love with Ethereum because it was this decentralized cloud computer. Well, each transaction really could be a program that's being run. That's what happens when you interact with a decentralized application or do something in decentralized finance. And code is not easy to read or understand, or even the inputs to a function and its arguments are not easy to understand. And it turns out that there was a lot of room for opportunity for us to make those complicated transactions really easy to understand, even for people without a technical background. And that's huge. Den is the fastest multi-sig for on-chain teams. And a lot of these things that seem small slow teams down drastically. Because you need multiple people to sign off on a transaction, each person slows down and starts messaging other people, trying to understand what that transaction is, because it's not obvious to them immediately. And that slows the team down. Even the ability to pay the transaction fee from the organization's account slows teams down, because what we saw was there was always this game of chicken. The last person to sign the transaction who had to actually execute it didn't want to pay the transaction fee themselves, and they didn't want to go through the reimbursement problem. So all these things together, the human readable transactions, the ability to pay the transaction fee from your account, as well as a host of other things, all kind of circle back to just speed and comfort and ease of use.
Yeah, I love the last piece, ease of use. At the end of the day, we kind of have to dumb things down so that folks understand what they're signing, and that really helps in the adoption of the technology. But what is the user experience and feedback been like, especially for a lot of these tools that have really introduced a lot of transparency and non-technical pieces that can allow folks easily and better understand what's going on?
So something that we experience a lot at Den is bringing over folks that are existing users of Safe. And the great thing about Safe is it's this general purpose piece of infrastructure that can be used for so many different use cases. But we'll be on a call and we'll be onboarding someone onto Den, and we'll see their eyes light up when they see better decoding for their more complicated transaction, or just that they can add a description explaining to their signers, hey, we are depositing USDC into Aave. Here's a screenshot of what the DApp looked like when I initiated the deposits. And all the other hundreds of tiny little user experience fixes alongside the major features that we've discussed. Really, you can kind of see it when people experience it for themselves, where they're so not used to having this experience that brings clarity instantaneously, and they become really excited to move a lot of their operations over so that it's easy for them to operate, not just by themselves, but as a team in a way that's collaborative and makes the entire team more effective.
Great. And as you sort of think of the user feedback experience, what are users asking you guys for today? Like, you've expanded your offering to include on-chain accounting, financial insights. What else are you hearing folks demand in sort of helping in that transition to better understanding the tech and better understanding what they're doing if they're non-technical folks?
Definitely. Yeah. And when we talk about our process for creating the best product we possibly can, that's something we're keeping track of. Going back to that mom test, if you could just see our database of feedback and requests and all of our notes, it's stacked ranked in terms of frequency. That's something we think a lot about. And currently, the meta of what people are struggling with and what they really want has to do with this multi-chain ecosystem today. It's no surprise, everyone knows that new chains, new L2s and L3s are popping up every single day. There's so many, and a lot of teams want to be on a lot of these networks. Today, Den supports a ton of networks, but we're always getting requests for more networks, expand, because I want to keep using the same tool everywhere I go. And it doesn't just stop there, because once people are really multi-chain, there's a host of new problems that come along. There's bridging your assets. I have my account on one network. I need to go to the other. Man, that's a pain. And if you ask anyone, organization or not, that is a pain. Keeping track of your address or your wallet across different networks, that's a pain. And that's something we're hearing from our customers, and that's something we're really excited to tackle. I highly suggest people watch out to the Den Twitter account, because there are going to be updates there.
Awesome. Did you want to drop the Twitter account here?
Yeah, it is at on-chain den, just on-chain den.
Sweet. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I think we've had a lot of conversation around multi-sig and custody and expanding the vision. What else excites you in crypto today?
I think this is a tough question because we spend so much time thinking about our customers and the problems that they have. And sometimes we pick our heads up and we see all these amazing things happening, and there's so much to dig into and not enough time. I think the thing that I'm really excited about personally right now is the amount of product market fit we're seeing for a growing number of crypto native applications that you may not even be able to tell on the surface are crypto. Great examples of this include Polymarket, the prediction market that's starting to be used in news sites and is now in perplexity when you ask about world events, to things like Blackbird XYZ, which is a loyalty program that exists on chain but feels like a really fun, easy to use Web 2 consumer app. And I think what's really exciting about this is, and what I think is really exciting about this is that this product market fit of non-crypto native users brings a lot more activity to the on-chain world. And the on-chain world is expanding both in its ecosystem of crypto native activity and providers, as well as non-crypto native activity and folks that are being introduced to crypto for the first time through some other general problem that they were interested in solving or some general product that they were interested in using.
Thank you for that, Jonah. I really think that the prediction markets is definitely one space that is likely to explode and would definitely see a product market fit with Den, especially since most of the users are early or new to crypto, which makes Den a perfect product to sort of like access and manage their activity through a lot of these prediction market platforms. Ittai, did you have a take as well on what else excites you?
It's so tough to answer that because on one hand, like Jonah mentioned, we're so heads down and stuck in our mindset of just focusing on our target users and our customers and those problems. But on the other hand, everything else that I see when I pick my head back up excites me too. So to pick some things out are tough. But the decentralized application space is, again, something that I'm really passionate about. To me, blockchains aren't purely financial instruments. They are. But they're also, again, these decentralized cloud computers where you can do anything. It's almost like asking, what's the most exciting thing that is going to be built on top of AWS or Google Cloud or Azure? It's so hard to answer because you almost don't even know what can be thought of. Polymarket was a great example from Jonah, but also decentralized social media is another one. But, it's how can you pick just one to talk about? It's tough.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely fair. We live in a world of crypto that just continues to innovate in such a rapid pace. So, yeah, to hear you both on that. And thank you so much for sharing about Den and what you guys are doing, how far you've come. I think the user experience is one of the pieces of the crypto industry that really needs solving as we think about onboarding the next billion or democratizing access or inclusion, whatever you want to call it. And really just proud to see what you guys, very admirable to see what you guys are doing and continue to do in that space. So thank you both for being on the show, and look forward to seeing and hearing more exciting things coming out of Den.
Thanks, Benga. Really appreciate you having us today and excited to ship more and keep an eye on our Twitter for what's coming next because we've got a lot of really exciting updates in the pipe.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and give us a good 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts so you can get all the latest conversations from the most interesting founders, builders, and investors from across the world. Thanks so much and have a good one.